way to Kupsunian and the Temple of Poseidon. At this point, I'll let our tour guide take over.
People, managers of offices and foreign businesses, etc. Because the average Greek only earns about 80,000 a month, so the average Greek certainly can't afford to live here. Where all these trees are, those of you from Australia will be interested. This is the Anzac Cemetery for Anzac troops that were killed during the Second World War here. As you can see, it's beautifully kept. And then it started to lose money, so he sold it to the government. Continue to lose money. They say there's two airports, east and west. This is the east airport. It's not really true, actually, because they all use the same runways. It's just that on one side the international terminals where the international airlines are, and this is Royal Olympic. How many rings are there on the back of an Olympic aircraft? Without looking now. Pardon? Somebody here knows. Most people say 5, which is the sign of the Olympic Games. And that wasn't Athens wanted to put on, but of course he was told he couldn't, because it's a registered trademark. So he said, all right, he's not put 6 on, and nobody will notice. And tick. 2 Airbuses and Tridents, etc. for Europe, and also for the larger islands. Little island hoppers for the smaller islands, and even a fleet of helicopters. I can't remember the name of them all, but you get the tin refried beans and all various different things. El Paso, that's it. So they do the El Paso range, which is fine, except they've never got it all in at the same time. So when you're ready to sort of make this wonderful meal, you go in there and you can only find some of the taco shells one day, and then you have to go back the week after and find something else. You can never go in and find it all there at the same time. Is they lease a stretch of beach, whether it be for their hotel or whatever, and then they develop it. And they put volleyball courts, windsurfing, tavernas, sunbeds, showers, you name it, anything you like on it. And then they can charge you. They can charge you 300, 400, 500 drachmas, depending on how many facilities they've got, to spend the day there. But they can't stop, even hotels cannot stop you going onto their beach. They can charge you for it, but they cannot stop you. And there is a limit, I think it's about 500 drachmas as to how much they can charge you. So you can see all these people swimming here, but I have to tell you, I wouldn't. The sea here is still not too clean. It's not until we get out to Many, which is a little further on yet, the sea really becomes clean enough to swim in, around the next piece of headland here, basically. Mediterranean Sea. About how it got its name, the Aegean Sea, a little later. Crescent shape hill there. Basically tourist resorts, frequented mostly by the Scandinavians and the Germans. Also some little caravan camping sites, and these are used by the poorer Athenians because with all the pollution and the traffic and the heat in Athens, of course one likes to get out of Athens, and not everybody can afford their own little summer house or villa or even just apartment out this way. So for those poor souls that can't, they have caravans out here, and they can come out at weekends and their holidays and whenever they're free to get away from the hustle and bustle and heat of the city. Quite a nice break for them. And once you're out here, the water is much cleaner and fit to swim in. So I'll give you a little break now. Obviously I'm not going to tell you everything today, otherwise we're going to have a very quiet 4 days. So hopefully I will cover more or less everything that you're going to want to know. We'll be discussing all about modern Greece, ancient Greece, Greek history in general, mythology, all sorts of things like this. And then on the last day when we come back into Athens, if anybody's still got any questions that I haven't mentioned or discussed and we haven't talked about, then we'll have a question and answer session, so I can cover anything I may have missed out or anything that you're interested in that I haven't talked about. And obviously at the end of each day, if you've got any questions about what we've talked about during that day, then you come up and we can chat about it. I'll do my best to answer them. So we're going to follow the coast along, and then we're going to have a story, which today is all about how the Aegean Sea got its name, and all about a king of Athens called Theseus. And it's also connected with one of the ports of call on your cruise, the island of Crete. And we'll be talking about, obviously, the temple and the god Poseidon. We'll go a little bit more into more detail about the gods, but basically, mythology, the Greek gods, numero uno god was Zeus. Now, most of you have seen Dallas, I suppose, and Dynasty, yes? Well, their scripts all come from Greek mythology, and that is true. And Zeus sort of made J.R. Ewing look a bit like a saint, and he was married to his own sister called Hera, so you're already getting the gist of this, I'm sure. And she makes Alexei Colby look like Florence Nightingale. So they were quite a family with the gods. They lived up on Mount Olympus, which is in the north of Greece, and generally caused havoc. Now, although they were gods, the ancient Greeks did not attribute to them that they were always good and always perfect. In fact, just the opposite, that gods could be childish and spoilt and bad-tempered. The Greeks had them as very human in their nature, with the exception that they did everything to excess. I mean, when they lost their tempers, you wouldn't believe what could happen to the world. And when they got childish and threw a tantrum, it was a tantrum and a half. So they were very human in their characters, at least. They were just a lot more human and a lot more powerful. And Poseidon was Zeus's brother. So Zeus was top god, and Poseidon, god of the sea, was Zeus's brother. And you'll be hearing about many other gods and goddesses as we go around. On a time, here in Athens, there was a great king called King Aegeus. He was very happy, but he really wanted a son and heir. So he went to see the oracle at Delphi, much as you will be doing, to ask guidance in this matter. And the oracle said you should go down to a place called the Peloponnese, and there in a city called Trojan you will find yourself a wife, and she will bear you a son and heir. And under no circumstances are you to bring her back to Athens, because if you do, this will cause the downfall of the city of Athens. So King Aegeus did exactly that. He went down to Trozen, and there he met King of Trozen's daughter, and they duly got married. And when she was pregnant, he decided to head back to Athens, but he told her he couldn't possibly bring her with him, because the oracle had said that this would bring bad luck to Athens, so she would have to stay there. But if the child that she was bearing turned out to be a boy child, and grew up to be of strong character and a good lad and worthy of the throne of Athens, she was to send him when he came of age to Athens to take his rightful place by his father's side as the son of heir. And he left under a large boulder a pair of sandals and a sword, so that he might recognise the child when the child arrived in Athens. And off he went back to Athens. Now, over on the island of Crete, there lived a king called King Minos, or King Minos. And King Minos, he was the king of the Minoan Empire, a very strong, powerful empire that had huge fleets of ships, very big trading power that went all over the world. They sent mercenaries to places like Egypt to fight. They were a very, very powerful race with the Minoans. And King Minos had asked the gods, especially the god Poseidon, to give him a sign that he was favoured by the gods and that his fleets of ships could sail the seas in safety. And Poseidon sent down a huge bull and told King Minos to sacrifice the bull to Poseidon, the god Poseidon, and that way he could ensure the safety of his fleets of ships and indeed of the people of Crete. Well, King Minos was a bit of a conceited soul, and so beautiful was the bull, he decided he wouldn't bother to do what the gods had said. Instead, he put the bull up on display and showed everybody, come and have a look what the gods have given me, see how favoured I am. Well, this really angered the god Poseidon, so he decided to teach King Minos a lesson he wouldn't forget, and indeed that's what he did, because he made King Minos' wife fall in love with the bull, and 9 months later she gave birth to the most horrendous creature called a Minotaur, which was half man and half bull. Now this Minotaur, well, King Minos did not know what to do with it. I mean, for a start off, it was not house-trained, and it was not the sort of thing that one just kept around the place. So King Minos went to see the royal architect, and he came up with a solution. He built a huge labyrinth of passages underneath the palace of Colossus, which is the palace you'll be visiting, which was the citadel, the main palace of King Minos, and he said, put the Minotaur in the centre, and he'll never be able to find his way out. You won't have killed him, so you can't upset Poseidon anymore, but you will at least got him out of the way. Fine, so this was done. But of course the Minotaur would not stay in there peaceably without at least being shown some form of respect. He was a creation of the gods. So every 7 years he demanded the lives of 7 youths and 7 maidens. They would be taken and there would be sacrificial games held and a big festival held, and then these poor youths and maidens would be led into the labyrinth to never reappear again, to be devoured by the Minotaur. Well, now King Minos had another little problem, because he didn't know where to get these youths and maidens from. So what he did was, well, he had a little bit of good luck. Well, it was bad luck, but it was good luck. You know the old saying, every cloud has a silver lining, because his son was visiting King Aegeus over here in Athens. And they went out on a wild boar hunt, and whilst they were out on the hunt, King Minos' son was killed. Now, in ancient times, and even to this day, if you have a guest in your home, you are considered responsible for his well-being and safety. And even if he has an accident, you are still responsible. It's just a tradition. So King Aegeus was responsible, even though it had been an accident. And King Minos said, right, my son has died whilst the guest in your home, so you must now pay some recompense to me, or I will send my armies over to make war on Athens. Well, at that time, Crete was much more powerful, the Minoan Empire much more powerful than Athens. And indeed, King Aegeus felt a moral obligation because, even though it hadn't been his fault, he was responsible because the boy was a guest in his home. So he had no choice but to send, every 7 years, 7 youths and 7 maidens over to Crete as recompense for the loss of King Minos' son. Now, while all this was going on, his wife down in Trojan had indeed given birth to a child, and it was a baby boy, and a very strong, good lad it was too, and she called him Theseus. And he grew up to be a good character, just as his father had hoped. So when he came of age, his mother told him to take the sandals and the sword from under the boulder and head to Athens to take his place at his father's side as king and son and heir. And that's what Theseus did. But instead of coming by sea, which would have been much safer and much simpler, he came overland, performing great deeds of heroism on the way. And he entered Athens expecting to be given a hero's welcome. Well, first of all, his cousins became very jealous and tried to convince King Aegeus that he was a spy. King Aegeus indeed was going to have him executed as a spy until he saw the sandals and the sword. And he recognised Theseus as his son. So he brought Theseus in and he took him in as his son and heir. But the rest of Athens was still a little dubious about this Theseus, and it was the time that the youths and the maidens were about to be sent off again. So there was a great amount of unrest. And Theseus turned round to his father and said, "Look, I have to prove myself worthy of being son and heir to the throne. What better way than for me to take the place of one of the youths and go off and do something about this nasty Minotaur?" Well, at first, King Aegeus wasn't too keen. I mean, he'd only just got his son. He didn't want to lose him straight away. But in the end, he realised this was the answer. So Theseus took the place of one of the youths and sailed off to Crete. But before he sailed off, his father changed the sails on the ship. He put black sails on the ship, and he put white sails in the hold of the ship. And he told Theseus, "If you are coming back safe and sound, change the black sails to white, so I may see the ship arriving on the horizon and I may know that you are safe and sound. If it has black sails, I will know you have perished in your attempt. If the sails are white, I will know you have been successful." So off went Theseus, and when he arrived on the island of Crete, of course, he was taken off to take part in these sacrificial games. And he was put into a contest with the champion wrestler of the whole of Crete. And whilst he was wrestling this champion wrestler, he was seen by Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, and Ariadne fell in love with Theseus. So she went to him and said, "If you take me away with you, I will help you escape." And he said, "Well, I have to do something about this Minotaur first. I can't allow this terrible sacrifice to go on any longer. So first of all, I must have an audience with your father." So Ariadne arranged this, and Theseus said, "Listen, I want permission to go into the labyrinth on my own, kill the Minotaur or solve the problem, and stop this terrible carnage that you make my father pay this recompense every 7 years." So King Minos thought about this and he thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'll tell him yes, because there's absolutely no way that this guy's going to get in and out of the labyrinth, so what have I got to lose? So he agreed to the bargain. Well, Theseus was only actually worried about one thing, and that was getting out of the labyrinth. So then he and Ariadne went to see the architect, who said, "It's very simple. You take a ball of string, you attach it to the entrance, you go in, and when you're ready to come out, you just follow the ball of string back out again." Theseus thought, what a good idea, why didn't I think of that? And that's precisely what he did. He took the ball of string, he went into the labyrinth. In the centre of the labyrinth he found the Minotaur. They wrestled to the death. Theseus was the victor. He came out of the labyrinth again, following the ball of string, and he and Ariadne set sail with the other youths and maidens to come back to Athens. But unfortunately a great storm blew up, and Theseus was forced to put into the island of Naxos. And there he was visited by the god Dionysus, who was god of wine and good living. Dionysus had seen Ariadne and fallen in love with her. And he told Theseus that if Theseus didn't leave Ariadne on the island of Naxos for him, he would ensure the downfall of the city of Athens. So poor Theseus had no choice but to leave his newfound love, Ariadne, on the island of Naxos. He sailed away to come back to Athens, and he was so heartbroken at having lost his new love, he totally forgot to change the sails from black to white. King Aegeus was standing where you will be standing in a few moments' time, on the top of Cap Sunion, looking out to sea. He saw the black sails. He assumed Theseus to be lost to him, his new son and heir to be dead. And in his anguish and his grief, he threw himself from the top of Cap Sunion onto the rocks in the sea below. After that, in memory of King Aegeus, the sea was always called the Aegean Sea. Theseus came home, and after a reasonable amount of mourning, he took over as king, and he became one of the greatest kings Athens has ever had. What happened to poor Ariadne, I hear you ask? Well, last I heard, she died a very happy alcoholic living with Dionysus on the island of Naxos. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ends the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. So, over every settlement, and there was a settlement here at Sunion, you would frequently find an acropolis, and this was the acropolis of Sunion. It was a fortification as well as being a temple. There was a fortification up there. It was a form of defence. There was a very strong defence wall going around the outside, over 500 metres long and supported by large square towers to strengthen it at various points. And there was a complete complex in there of complete sanctuary. This particular temple, as we said, dedicated to the god Poseidon, it originally had 34 Doric columns. Doric, there are three types of columns. Doric are the simplest ones. At the top of a column, you have the top of it is called a capital. Now, Doric columns have the very plain, simple capitals. Then you get the Ionian, which are the slightly newer. The Doric are the oldest. Ionian, and they look like scrolls. And then you get the Corinthian, which are the very really fussy ones, which are the newest of these sort of columns. And you can also get what is called a composite, which is a mixture. I will pass out, when we start the coach tour, some leaflets that I've made up for people, which will give you an idea. It's about Greek architecture as well. So the word...
So here we are at Cap Sunion. The Temple of Poseidon is just ahead of us, and as you can see by the people's clothing, it is extremely windy. Apparently it's always very, very windy up here. It's quite a walk up. And so instead of using the original sound, which has nothing but wind hitting the microphone and having very windy noises, I thought we would listen to some music while we are looking at the beautiful view of the Cap Sunion and the Temple of Poseidon. Poseidon, of course, was the god of the sea and the brother of Apollo. The sea that you are looking at is the Aegean Sea. Aegean, of course, is a part of the Mediterranean. always, at the bottom there's a place for snacks and drinks. This is from the bus parking lot as we are preparing to leave on our way to Delphi or Delphi.